Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me the owner and director of Unlikely Hero Studios, Laurie Foster. So, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited because you got a lot going on, including the current Kickstarter that's going on for issue 4 of The Surgeon. But before we get into that, I know that you are heavily involved in Unlikely Hero Studios. I already sort of tipped off my hat a little bit, and some people are hearing about Unlikely Hero Studios for the first time. So, what is this company and publisher produce, and what type of comics do you produce? And how did it all come about? Because it's interesting and what you guys do over there.
Oh, wow. UHS started, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, and at the time, I was hired as an inker, and I worked on Super, which some people know about, might know about. And from there, I kind of became a co-owner, and now I am an owner. And since then, we branched out. So we have Super, of course, that everyone knows us for, and then The Surgeon. We're now doing an anthology called Elsewhere. We have a new series called The Unthinkables, which is another superhero, supervillain kind of series. We have a series called Up from the Skies. We've kind of gone nuts. We've kind of exploded in the last couple of years.
So let's talk a little bit about this because this journey is fascinating because inkers are becoming somewhat of a lost art, I feel, where, a lot of people now, a lot of artists do their own inks. Sometimes colorists do inks as well. And it is a very technical art. And it does require a lot of, skills. And there is stuff that inkers do, like add depth and different line weights. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could really fuck up a book. And, with certain comics and certain companies, sometimes they hire 2, 3, 4 inkers all with the same piece purposely to see which one looks best. And so what is that like to come up? Because you've come up very much from the ground up into being an inker, then becoming a co-owner, then becoming an owner, and obviously sort of learning along the trade. And it changes the way you run a company, per se, when you actually sort of, to give the analogy, when you're actually sweeping the floors and then you're climbing up the ladder, and when you become the CEO, you understand what it's like, how the company works. If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, oh man, just it all kind of like you said, it all kind of comes together, like you starting as an inker or whatever. Like it's a lot of, I guess, I'm trying to think of the way to put it. Like it's a lot of editing work, actually. Like, well, depending on who you're inking over, you're kind of fixing panels and you're fixing things so they look better, and just hyper focusing on that kind of stuff for years made me really good as an editor, because it's easy to find mistakes and fix stuff and help with layouts, and then from there, and then now I'm micromanaging the company. It's bizarre, I guess. But
Yeah, and to even go further into this, because obviously you guys have Super, and Super is kind of that fun superhero, anti-trope superhero where we got robots and androids and bar fights and everything that's supposed to be fun in superheroes. And it's not dark, it's rather light, and it's rather lighthearted. And so what prompted that and what was working on that? Because, well, in the superhero world, a lot of it is dark. DC and Marvel tend to do dark storylines, and they don't really do anything that's fun and out of the box and sort of wacky, per se. So what was that like, really getting to ink that and getting those art styles and those stories and providing an alternative and continuing that alternative? Because it is nice to have the alternative, because a lot of people view comics as an escape. And while it's fun to watch Batman go down a rabbit hole, at the same time, after a while, you're like, I really don't want to watch Batman go down a rabbit hole, or you don't want to read Tom King's The Vision. It's rather depressing after a while.
right, like there's only so many like Snyder cuts you can watch. Like when you start to need some color and some um Zach Dolan, who created Super, was just like, he's an encyclopedia of pop culture references, and it really lends itself to, because everyone reading comics loves pop culture and they get the references, and then it's even better. And yeah, just I don't know. The DC and Marvel, like they're great, but like it's like you said, there's an overload of just grim shit. And
It
like
gets
the last
stale
couple of
also.
years, yeah, the last couple of years have been just kind of grim. So like it's nice to have something silly. Like it deals with some serious themes, but there's a lot of silliness and a lot of jokes. And I think, at least for me, like I need an escape. Like I don't, right now, I don't want to watch depressing stuff on Netflix. I want to watch funny stuff. I want that kind of escape.
I mean, even for me, in which that I watch a lot of anime, and I'm right now taking a massive break from anime, and I'm taking a break from a bunch of stuff, and I'm actually watching Yellowstone. And the reason why I'm watching Yellowstone is that it's this beautiful scenery, and it's taking place in Montana, and it's such a different vibe, and it's an intense show, so the intensity hasn't left, but rather we're dealing with a whole different part of the country for me, because I'm on the East Coast, and now I know nothing about Montana, and it's really like a nice thing. And I'm watching the entire thing. It's going to be like 2 weeks, venue for me and venture for me, and then I'll go back to like some like Law and Order, and it'll be refreshing. And I think that's what Super does in many ways, is that it is that break from that entire just dark brooding and staleness, and it breaks it up nicely. And to even go further, because UHS has also done things like Elsewhere, and that's a massive anthology. And I throw up something that's going to prove my point, and these are all the people that worked on it. So, what prompted that entire thing? And I'll throw this up again because there's a lot of names in this, and this isn't even all of them. And so there's a bunch of different stories with Elsewhere, and anthology work is something that I enjoy because I enjoy the idea of all these different, stories and different people doing things and covering a variety of genres. And so what was that entire experience? Because it's a whole different ballgame to do an anthology. And I know that you had a story in there, and then Roland Mann, who is Silverline Comics, was involved in a few of them. And so how did that all come about? Because it is different to do an anthology than a regular comic.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think what prompted us to do it, the first volume, which I actually have here. Um, what prompted us to do it was like I kept seeing so many indie creators with like really nice stuff that they weren't publishing or weren't able to publish, or they'd submit it to heavy metal and only so many people get into heavy metal, and that's like such a process. And I was like, we should publish this stuff. It's really good. And like when we first started, I just got, some submissions, some ideas from friends, and then the word kind of spread and people started submitting. And then of course the one you posted is actually Elsewhere Volume 2, and like it kind of blew up. Like we got, I don't know, uh easily 100 submissions. And
So that's a good problem to have.
no, it's great. Yeah, no, I'm very happy about it. And like it's really nice because we have this mix of seasoned creators who are published and killing it, like Matt Frank. And then we have there's a couple of people on Elsewhere too who have never had anything published. This is their first published piece, and like it's absolutely fantastic. And now they get to have it published, and we get to show people, and it's really cool.
Yeah, to even talk about that, because one of the things that I have an issue with the comic world in particular, and I'm not a comic creator, I'm not a comic artist, I'm not a comic writer at the moment. At some point I will. Tend to be more on the other side of it, where I tend to be a seller, I tend to be a speculator, I tend to be a comic book investor. I get things graded and signed, and I move things. And so I'm on the other side of it. But what my gripe is that there's a lot of people that it's really hard to break in, and it's hard to break in on the indie scene. Kickstarter operations and logistics can be a pain in the ass because there's three stages of a Kickstarter. There's the copyright of a Kickstarter, and then actually building out your rewards and writing it. That includes making your video, and it's basically funnelytics. For those who understand ClickFunnels or anything like that, that's what Kickstarter is. and then there's many exits on your Kickstarter, and then backer kit is your upsell. And if you didn't know that till today, that's news to everybody. It's a gigantic funnel. Then there's the actual product you're selling, and then there's the shipping and getting it to the backer. And so it's very difficult to just run a Kickstarter, not to mention that not everybody has 24 pages or 40 pages, but some people have 8 pages. And then also getting mainstream, also it can be very difficult. And so obviously you're giving people a lot of platforms. And even if you are a seasoned creator, maybe you just can easily create 8 pages, but you can't go and create, 24 pages and you run a Kickstarter every 4 months. And now this gives somebody an ability to keep their name out there. So what is that like? Because I feel like you're giving people a real platform, as well as providing a variety of work to people. And I think it's something that more publishers need to do. And I think it's more of an obligation, meaning that it's not required, but it should be done more, because this sort of betters the community in many ways. And I feel that that's something that's lacking in the entire Kickstarter world, in particular, more so than the mainstream. And even in mainstream, I think it's lacking significantly as well. But in indie, it's almost non-existent.
Yeah. It's in both industries, it's really hard to, like, everyone is so flooded with submissions and no one is really looking at submissions, and it's just this like grind of just trying to get your work seen. And there's a lot of really good work. So I'm hoping that the books, like, even if they're not bestsellers or whatever, like, they get people looking at them just to be like, oh, well, I would love to work with this artist, I would love to work with this writer, and we have been finding people that way. We've been hiring new artists from submissions in elsewhere. And yeah, I think more companies should do this, and they should try to, like, just get more diverse creators and get outside of the box. The comic industry feels like this place that, like, really, like, it's like everyone that's working in it, like, that's it. Like, you don't get a chance if you're new. Like, it's really hard to get that chance. Like, I want to say Todd McFarlane said when he first started submitting, he submitted something like 500 times before he was accepted. And it's like, I mean, great, he got in and now he's big and everything, but, like, wow, like, I feel like maybe we should have given him a chance, like, before like, not everyone is persistent enough to do that 500 times. People are going to.
I don't know if you know the Starbucks story of Howard Schultz. He needed funding to expand Starbucks, and for 277 days he woke up, asked for funding, got rejected, and he had the tenacity to get up and ask for funding on the 278th day to expand Starbucks into what it is today. But the idea is that it is very tough to have the tenacity and to keep getting up. I mean, getting up 10 times is difficult, let alone 20, let alone 30, let alone 40, let alone 500 times, and it's complicated. And after a while, you get beat up. And I feel that this book gives a platform. It also teams up people that, in the same book and all that stuff, where now people can say, okay, you have somebody like, I can't think of somebody off the top of my head who was in Elsewhere too, but who's a big name on the indie scene or even mainstream. But then that gets eyes on somebody who isn't, and now they have their first thing published. And once you're published, it's easier to get the second one published and the third one published. And then you also have an association with UHS, and that's helpful because that opens up a little more doors. And now you're taken more seriously. And so I think this is very helpful for a lot of people. And also, unfortunately, sometimes people just need an opportunity. Everybody's been there where somebody's just needed an opportunity and somebody needed to take a chance. And it doesn't matter whether you're running and you're worth $200 million now, because everybody on Shark Tank has been in that position. Somebody just had to give them an opportunity. And that's what this is. And so, and the work is there, and just someone says, hey, I'll take a shot on you for a 2-pager. So I think it's very important because it betters the community. And I also think it's beneficial because if you publish, 90 stories and 60 of them are from people that nobody ever heard of, statistically, a few of those people are going to wind up doing something amazing. You're there first as well. That's my entire business strategy. with these interviews is that I'm looking for a lot of breakout people, and statistically 95% of the people I interview, not to say they're not talented, but with the wrestlers in particular, a few of those people are going to go to AEW or WWE, but I was there before. And so that's how I view this in many ways. To put it bluntly, I don't know if that's the strategy, but that's how I view it.
No, it is though. And I think, like you said, like more even small creators should be doing it. Like we need to try to like not be competitive. We need to cross promote and we need to help each other. Like honestly, it's only beneficial to everyone to do stuff like anthologies or on Kickstarters. Like I try to cross promote as many Kickstarters as I can that interest me and that would interest people that they're just not seeing because social media sucks. Like I can't believe, you post about your Kickstarter twice and like I have, I don't know, 2,000 friends on Facebook, and after 2 posts, like there's 10 people seeing my shit. And it's like,
yeah. So hopefully she's back in a second. Okay. Hopefully. Wouldn't be a live interview without this. It would not be a live interview without it freezing up. Oh boy. Would not be a live interview without it freezing up. Absolutely love it. Okay. I love live interviews. This is fun. Technical difficulties. See, it wouldn't be a live interview without them. Cool. This is fun. Would not be a live interview without this. Cool. So technical difficulties. Clearly, this is one of those circumstances. Obviously, hopefully, this is all going to be straightened out, and we will continue moving forward and marching down the field. So yeah. So in the meanwhile, you might as well show some art from the surgeon, which we're going to talk about. So this is kind of issue number 1 and dealing with it. This is a bunch of cool covers that are out there with this in particular. So this is obviously covers that you could pick up, or they're prints that you could pick up. This is, I believe, a shirt that can be picked up, and it's sort of chibi art style, and that's kind of cool in that regard. There's obviously some of this stuff, which is all the covers that can be picked up. I believe that these are dog tags. Word is Bond dog tags, so that's kind of cool. Obviously, we got some cool art prints, as I sort of showed above, so that's kind of cool. And I guess there's some cool metal stuff that's going on with this. Obviously, there's some more print stuff that you could add on. I think there's books that you could add on. Obviously, cool hollow foil stuff that could be added on. I believe there's also some coins that could be added on there. There's some more stuff that could be picked up right there. And obviously, these are just a bunch of names that were involved in Elsewhere Volume 2. And some of these people are doing some cool stuff. So, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, I am so sorry. Yeah, my internet just died. I am calling some people tomorrow. I'm so sorry.
I was just showing art of the surgeon prematurely,
Okay.
maybe. So, and I was showing everybody else that was also involved in elsewhere too. And I think one of the people that just to reiterate was Stan Yak is on that list. And obviously Stan Yak is all over the place in the indie comic world. But obviously we were speaking a lot about, I guess what I view is sort of preach, I forget what it, what you believe in, you should be preaching, or some version of that. I don't know the full stance. It's slipping my mind here. Practice what you preach is what I think it really sums up the anthology, and even just the idea of social media is very difficult right now with this. I mean, I could tell you for a fact that when I was doing these lives last March and April, much easier. Nobody was doing it on Facebook. Nobody was doing it on YouTube. Nobody was doing it on Twitch. And now everybody in every business, and every business's business, has a podcast, has a Facebook Live, and it is massively competitive. And there's more foot traffic on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch that it is super hard to compete. And so I think that very much anthologies help to do that, because when you have 30, 40 people involved and they all have their own social circles, even if they all tweet it out, it's now reaching 40. It's 40 tweets, not one. And it's also reaching all their circles, and then their circles overlap and people re-see it. So, yeah, so social media has been very, very difficult, I think, for everybody in general, because obviously COVID and all that stuff kept everybody home, and Twitter is the place you go. Facebook's the place you go.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's super interesting, the fact that you're doing this and that you're actually giving people an opportunity and giving a platform for people, and that you have the problem of having too many things being submitted to you, and even putting it together, because that's a whole project to put an anthology together and make it work.
Oh yeah, it's it's been kind of a learning experience to put a kind of guides to, because like for me, I've been working in the industry for a while, so like I know like stuff like file size and stuff like basic comic stuff. But I realized quickly on the first volume of the anthology that like new people like are making really cool shit, but like they have no idea what they're doing in terms of setting a book up for publishing. So we've had to kind of over time like figure out how to help people submit properly, because they don't really tell you this shit everywhere. Like it's not obvious. And getting people to kind of read the guidelines and submit, and then helping them if they didn't follow them and so on. Whereas a bigger publisher would probably just be like, well, it's not the right format, garbage. Like we're trying to have more patience with that, because like I realize people like have no idea.
There's a lack of education in
Yeah.
comics, and it's complicated. This is why, with the project I want to do, it's like I'm debating even if I want to do it on Kickstarter, because it's a whole thing of putting something together, and it can be beyond frustrating. There's a lot of benefits to crowdfunding, and there's a lot of not benefits, because there's headaches. If you don't own your stuff at DC for the most part, you don't own your stuff at Marvel, and you might own your stuff at Image, but then you're in debt to the company. And it's a very complicated world to be in, and you're sort of caught in the middle at UHS to some degree, because you're creating stuff and UHS owns it, and I think your creators own some stuff with it possibly, and I don't know the full inner workings, and if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me, but the idea is that you're a publisher also, but you're crowdfunding too, and it's super tricky. And also you have works that you create and that you work on, but then you also have other works like the Unthinkables, and as well as Up from the Skies, and those are done by different people. And so what is that like for you? Because now you're managing, but there are artists and writers, and I would imagine there's editors involved, and that you're overseeing those people, but you also have to give them some managerial positioning to make certain decisions. Especially if somebody's writing the comic, you can't tell somebody how to write the comic per se.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question.
So what is that like for you? Because it must be weird having worked on comics, but also making sure that it's up to the standard for you to publish it as a company, and making sure that it also fits your demographic, and that, or if you're building a new demographic, you understand that demographic so that you can write the copy correctly and you can market it correctly. And if somebody calls up or a comic shop calls you up and says, "Hey, what is this about? Who is this for?" Because
Right.
that information has to be known, and also making sure that it's going to sell at the same time, because running comics is a business.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So to touch on a few things then, so for publishing, um, I want to say we're relatively unique in that. So for Elsewhere, for example, everyone who submits still owns their own work. We don't take ownership over any of it. For some of our properties, like the Unthinkables, they're they're not initially ours, and the contract that we make, and like I'm not going to go into depth on it, but like it's a much better deal for the creator. Like we're not trying to steal any rights away. We co-own stuff, and the money gets distributed in a way that's fair, and like we don't take any money until the creator is making money. We try to, because like I've seen some publishing agreements, and wow, like your stuff can be lost for years, while they have like film rights, for example. They'll just take the film rights and sit on them, and they like you get excited like as a small artist or company.
Skybound does that. Is a good example of this, where certain things with Image are owned by the creators. Like a book like Saga, I think it is a good example of this, where Brian K. Vaughan said, "I don't want to do a film of this." Whether he changes his mind when they write him like a $10 million check is up for discussion. But the idea is that he's like, "I don't want a television show, I don't want a movie of this," and they own that. Fiona Staples and BK Vaughan own that. But certain products with Skybound, they own the film rights, they own the TV rights. That doesn't mean that if you're the creator, you're not going to get a piece of that action. It just means that you don't have the right of refusal. You know,
Right.
you're going to get your money. It's not an issue of money, because sometimes people don't want it. Alan Moore with Watchmen, he wasn't happy about the Watchmen situation. So
Mhm.
obviously it's very complicated with work, because maybe somebody says, "Hey, I don't want my work in TV. I don't want my work ruined by a freaking television show." And look, there's been great television shows out there on comics. Happy is a good example of that. That was a fantastic show. Polar by Santos is amazing. That entire movie was spot on, perfect in my opinion, on what that comic is about. But at the same time, there's plenty of shitty things that have happened. So obviously, it's very interesting where you set up a reasonable deal on certain products and properties. So yeah. So
So
I
my
mean it.
internet was stuttering, and I was like, "Wait, am I disconnecting? No, we're good. Okay."
So obviously you're almost more like a co-op type contract, where everybody has some type of ownership of certain things, and all that stuff is negotiated out first, and complete ownership shifted out there. And so, but even going further beyond the contract, what is that like to manage this? Because it's I think that's what people are more interested in to some degree. Is that like, what is that like for you? Because you're the coach. You're not the quarterback. If that analogy makes sense. And so
Yeah, like we're trying to. The idea is that I work with. So Paul is the guy who writes and owns Unthinkables or whatever. I want to work with him. We chose Unthinkables, and we agreed to publish Unthinkables because it's something that I want to publish, and like I kind of let him do what he wants, like he can do what he wants. If he doesn't want a certain thing, like him and I work together basically, and like I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want full control to tell him what to do and what not to do, because I trust him already. Like, I know he's not going to, like, our views align, what we want to do aligns. So in that way, we kind of have to be, I guess, more selective about, who and what we're going to publish. But I like that. Like, people know that we publish high quality stuff, and that's not going to change. We're not just going to start publishing like whatever. But yeah, just it's a little different, I guess, than what people are used to, where the publisher just takes control and is like, well, this is what we're doing. I'm just trying to take what he's making and make it better and publish it and like get it out there, really. And I don't want to interfere too much because it's great. Like, I don't want to, yeah.
And it's also, I would imagine, nice to not have to, to have another writer in there, and also, to sort of be, hovering above it versus being the thick of it, because it can be very exhausting to have to like write 9 titles every single month, so I would
Right.
imagine that's nice. And it's nice to expand, because when you have other people writing, and that they're doing some of the heavy lifting, and then you have somebody doing the art in there too, and that now you're looking at the scans and saying, well, this is good, where is the story going, sell me more of where we're going with this, so I know how this works. And also, you haven't done crossovers yet, and I don't know if that's on the table, that's not on the table, but obviously that's also something that's nice too, where all this stuff is in their own universes per se. There's no UHS universe, from my understanding.
Well, not. It's not outright, but if you look carefully in The Surgeon, there is a scene where Hanover is wearing a super T-shirt with Black Adam's logo on the front. We like to stick in like some little stuff like that, and we'll probably end up doing that. Sorry?
Easter eggs.
Yeah, little Easter eggs like that. Yeah, we'll probably end up doing stuff like that for Unthinkables too, if Paul agrees to that, which he probably will. He has a lot of pop culture references, so I'm sure we can stick it in. Yeah, I'm not sure about like an overt crossover, but like we like to cross over in terms of little Easter eggs like that for people who have read multiple books, and I don't know, I think it's really fun.
And obviously, you mentioned The Surgeon, so I want to get into that. While you were slightly away for a few minutes, I was showing off a bunch of cool art with The Surgeon and a bunch of rewards. And obviously, there's a lot going on with The Surgeon at the moment. Obviously, there's been 3 issues, and the basic premise is that Dr. Hanover pretty much is a traveling medic that also might be a mercenary to some degree, and she's sort of kicking ass, taking names, and she gets calls that people in forts and towns and I guess safe areas and safe havens need a medic. And well, she gets a particular call that pretty much brings her all the way to a place kind of called Turtle Island, which is supposed to be a safe haven, and it's further west than she's ever been before. I think it's in South Dakota or North Dakota. I'm not too sure. It's in one of the Dakotas, that kind of area, from my understanding.
In the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Hey, it's in the west where the land is wide open and there's plenty of ranches to hang out on. And well, pretty much she's sort of running from a past east, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So where did this idea come from? And you can fill in any blanks that I might have missed on exactly the basic premise, because there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to dive into it in a second further.
Well, the whole premise came from John Pence. He's writing or co-writing on this, and he I want to say that he's just, we're gonna actually have him on our live stream on Monday, but he's obsessed with sword fighting and stunts and that kind of thing. Hang on a second. I have a cat that's gonna knock over a light. No. Okay. He's really into sword fighting and fight choreography and that kind of thing, and he just thought it would be really cool to have this badass female character who isn't necessarily conventionally good looking. Like she's kind of rough around the edges. She's missing fingertips. She's got scars. She's missing teeth. And but she's a really skilled doctor. She's a really smart woman, and she's had to start killing people to survive because there's nut jobs, coming after her. And I,
And let's set up a little bit more of this, because obviously something happened in the world. An apocalyptic outing happened. People sort of have become, tougher. There's, I guess, safe havens in society. There's no zombies, so I want to make that crystal clear. But it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever read the book 1 Second Later, where pretty much two nuke weapons go off and they wipe out all communications, and they basically shut out the entire grid. And well, you have a circumstance where now there's no communication. The legitly towns are trying to figure out how to survive, and they'll have to figure out what to do and how to sort of deal with things. And a bunch of people who have skills become very, very relevant. Bartering is very much out there, and we kind of have that world. And I guess she's looking for sort of an area, and she's a skilled doctor. And well, just being a doctor, because if you're traveling, you gotta protect yourself. And so we get this really cool scenario where, and we get also very much irony. We get a killing doctor, a doctor saving lives, but also killing people at the exact same time to sort of save her life and protect herself. And so it's super interesting, this entire dynamic. And so what is that like to really even get this idea out there and throw this idea out there, because it is different than things that have been done before. I mean, there's been books like Surgeon X by like Image and a variety of others, but nothing has dealt with a post-apocalyptic killing doctor, but also a saving doctor. And well, she winds up at a fort, and the story kind of kicks from there.
And I also like she's not like really nice either. Like it always just
She's difficult. It's a nice way how to say it.
Yeah, she's very difficult. And she gets to Turtle Island or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my God, like, can you help us?" And she's like, "I guess." Like, it's not like she's not a typical heroine. She's not, but as the story goes, Turtle Island kind of grows on her, and the people grow on her, and it's kind of a weirdly heartwarming in the middle of like this weird Mad Max scenario.
And what's kind of nice too is that we get this circumstance where she has a relationship, I think, with this, sergeant or this army guy, David Rogers, and he's. I think it's David Rogers, right?
I am so used to him just being called Rogers that I don't remember his first name.
I might be getting his first name wrong too, but obviously Rogers, and he's a military guy, and he's in the fort, and sort of they're training people, and she sort of gets duped into training these people in sword fighting, and then well, they're dealing with like a gang and that entire thing, and this entire circumstance is just like the story really expands, where now we are dealing with a gang called the Animal Machines, and they're pretty much trying to salvage, and they're surviving, and they want to attack the fort. And then, well, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on, and then obviously Rogers gets addicted to opium, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and well, obviously the fort grew on her and Rogers sort of stay outside the fort to fight and deal with this gang, and then a variety of shit just sort of spills out of that. So what was that like, really getting her to change her heart and having this entire circumstance sort of play out? Because she kind of wants to stay at this fort, and we don't know exactly why at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think there's layers here. Like I think she got to Turtle Island and she wanted to get out as soon as possible because she's just uncomfortable around people. But now, she has to stay. One second. He's determined. Can you just sit next to me or on me? There you go. Okay. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I used to have a cat, and she was a killer, and she would kill like a rabbit, and then she'd want to bring the rabbit into the house and present it.
It's a gift for you.
And then this is so off topic, and it's so much better to the conversation. She then would want to bring it in. Then we would get her away from it, bring her in, and then she would just cuddle up like on my mom's lap, and it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like, oh, it's just a normal day, and so I completely understand why your cat wants to be around you because it wants to be social, but it views you as a source of warmth, and it doesn't really
Hmm.
care about anything else, and it's just happy to be around.
Yeah, and I have lights on me and he will knock them over. Like he knows. He knows what to do to get attention. So we're gonna yes, you're so bad. Okay. But yeah, she's kind of dealing with conflicting emotions right now because she wants to help them and like she came to this Turtle Island place, and they're all surviving, but also they're completely clueless because they've been in this place and farming and like they've never encountered the hot animal machines. They've never encountered anything really. They've just been good. And she's like, you have catfish and you have like, wow, okay, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna help you for a bit, and then of course, now they've showed up. They have no idea what to do, so she's trying to train them as quickly as possible and help them.
And
And
that raises
then,
a really cool question because it raises this question of like innocence to some degree with these people. It also raises this idea of being sheltered and unaware of their surroundings, where miraculously this group, and we don't know the full extent of how this group came about, but they've been so isolated and protected from the screwed up world for years probably because they've been self-sufficient, and that's probably a good thing in this case for them. But then they're being attacked because well they have resources and they're ignorant on it, and it's a real interesting scenario to throw out there in an apocalypse, and it's a really interesting topic to explore. Is that if you're in an apocalypse and then you meet a group that's completely encountered, what do you do with them, and how do they survive when they're being attacked? Because at some point, their defenses are going to fall. No defense is impervious to breaking down, and it's such an interesting topic to explore.
yeah, thank you. And it's like very timely right now with COVID, I find. We've seen kind of a really interesting, varied reaction that human beings have had to this. Like I'm still kind of surprised, like I like zombie movies and I've watched them and apocalypse movies and people always make these like just the weirdest, dumbest decisions and but then it's happening, like this pandemic's happening and I'm like, wow, no, these decisions are realistic. Like people do some dumb shit when there's a pandemic. It's,
People are not logical.
no.
It's very clear. People are very much self-inflicting pain. It is very difficult, and we all do it. And it's amazing when people make excellent decisions. And the problem is that all the excellent decisions are scrutinized, and all the dumb decisions are positively viewed. And then fast forward 40 years, all the people who made all the decisions that they were scrutinized for are the ones who are doing okay in life and retire with dignity. The people who made horrific decisions that were positively encouraged are broke. That's called what happens. And to even bring it further into this, we get that position, and this concept is just great. And then we also get that outside force that is also good that wants to help these people sort of get out of the cave a little bit. And I'm not going to go, Socrates and Plato on everybody, but it's very much that idea where these people are very much needing to be brought out into the real world and figure out how to deal with everything. And so
Yeah.
it's super interesting what's going on. And obviously it's even more interesting that a doctor is bringing them out because a doctor has, an oath for their patient safety and to treat people. And I don't know how far that oath goes in an apocalypse, but treating people to some degree, because what got them into this decision is being ignorant and being uninformed. And that needs to be treated by, Dr. Hanover in many ways. And she's
Yeah.
not just treating somebody as a surgeon anymore or for medical problems, but the issue of ignorance in many ways. And so that's how I kind of view this comic a little bit, is that it's a dose of reality.
Yeah, and she just encompasses that reality. She's so jaded and like surly, uh, and I love it. She's just she's so tired of this shit. She's like, I just want to help you people, you know?
And she's also a little bit fucked up too, in which that her, and I'm not too sure who came up with the solution, but obviously these people have opium. And for those who don't know, opium is a painkiller. And a lot of things are derivative from opium. And so they come up with the solution to deal with this gang by poisoning the opium, which is a pretty dark position. If we're really going to look at it, putting poison in opium and the fact that you're in an apocalypse, that opium is a legitimately a tradable commodity. And I don't know what type of opium that they have per se, but obviously, regardless of whatever it is, it's pretty bad. But then we get the situation where Rogers sort of, and I might be ruining something, so everybody, if you don't want it to be ruined, I'm sorry, but he's developed somewhat of an opium issue because he got wounded, and well, now he's poisoned. They're delivering it to this gang per se as almost a peace type thing, and then the warrior becomes the patient. The physician is now the killer and is the warrior. We get a complete role reversal, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and they probably still have to deal with some gangs and a bunch of other stuff that's out there in the real world to protect this entire safe haven fort that's self-sustaining, that could probably give these people a decent life with minimal threats if it's handled the correct way. And so we had a whole irony situation, and that's kind of, I guess, where issue 4 deals with.
Yeah, I'm really excited for people to read issue 4. I think it's going to go places that people are not expecting at all. When I read the script, I just immediately messaged John and I was like, dude, no. Seriously?
So
And
what is that like? Because this is interesting, because you're now in a situation, and I think you do some inks on it and some other stuff on this book as well. But like you're like, oh man, we're taking a hard left, like because it's like, oh, what is going to happen here? Where I didn't see that. We're going dark, or we're going deep, or we're legitimately going the straight and narrow. Now we're making a hard left, and people are going to fall off the cliff real quick.
yeah. And when we first started the Surgeon, John had the script written for most of it, actually. Um, and I was like, just on the first issue, I was sold. But as I read, I was like, whoa, like this is not what I like. The story itself is not what you would expect, but it definitely takes a bunch of left turns. It's really cool.
You're an anime fan, right? Have
Yeah.
you seen Ruby by any
Sorry,
chance?
you cut out. What was that? Have I seen what?
Have you seen Ruby? RWBY.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's good though.
So so I'm going to give the analogy that people are going to get, and whether you've seen it or not, I think people who are listening to this and see this, the first 2 volumes of Ruby, and even all the way up to pretty much the ending of volume 3, we're lighthearted, we're dealing with a problem, it's not over the top. And the volume 3, legitimately the last episode, everything changes. It's like when the Fire Nation attacked, everything changed. Okay, in which that it went from being a very lighthearted scenario, and I'm not saying this book is lighthearted, but this book, for the most part, is going one direction, and then I feel like in issue 4, and correct me if I'm wrong, we turn it and we're like, okay, well, now this book has gone to another level, and now it's taken a darker, more sinister, more adult turn, where this book has now been elevated up from something, and we're ascending the hill, essentially, because that's where it goes. And I have a feeling like what is that like when you do that? Because it does change it. And obviously this is, I think, a 5-issue series. So what is that like to raise the temperature in a book? Because
Um, it will be 6 actually, which is which should be interesting. I'm interested in seeing the reaction when we get the book out. I'm interested in seeing if people are mad at us about it, because It's not a change, like a drastic change, in terms of we have the same characters and we have the same themes, but like just it doesn't go where you expect it to, and I'm very curious how the fans are going to react. I'm really excited. Like maybe me and four other people know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not going to press too hard, but there's been some other stuff that's also occurred with this book where there's been a shift of like art team sort of where Omar Zaldivar, or I'm not going to get his name right, so I'm sure you're going to correct me. But Omar joined the art team and then sort of kicked it up, and that's also a very interesting change and shift. And working with a new artist and having a new artist come on and bringing their style and paying respects to the first three issues and that same style, but also adding their style into it and contributing and raising up the level. And that's always tricky when you have art teams change, and it's not an exclusive problem to you per se, but obviously it's interesting when that happens because every artist has their style and every artist views something differently. And then what was that like for you? Because it could be stressful.
Yes, definitely. When we went into this, I did not expect, anything that happened. I did not expect changing artists. But it has been interesting kind of seeing how different artists work with us, with John Pence specifically, because he has a very unique kind of style for making the books. He has the script, but in the script he includes uh, a ton of references, and he also makes because he's a stunt guy, he's a martial arts guy, so he actually makes videos for the artist to kind of see how the action's supposed to pan out, and he figures out like you wouldn't know, based on cat you wouldn't know, but like he plans out, all combat scenes a bit at a time, and he like every move he wants to make sure that it's a real thing that can be done with a sword and a dagger, and so an artist coming in has to be prepared to kind of like they have their own liberty, but they have to kind of follow. John wants a certain realism within the book, so they have to follow that as well. And Omar Zaldivar, he's the artist for number 4. He's getting really into it. He loves it. He's him and John are working really, really well together, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and obviously, from my understanding, different artists react differently. Me and my interview before this were talking about that, and some writers love giving their artists a lot of freedom, and they appreciate interpretations on things, but then other writers tend to be more dictatorial on what they would like, and they expect certain things to be done in certain positions, and so it's very interesting because, and I think both styles work depending on who you are, depending on the artist, because some artists like, you're having boundaries in place and others don't. And so obviously finding the right artist for that is a skill set, because the worst thing you want is to have an artist who doesn't understand that something is required of you and that it has to be in certain areas more dictatorial and in others it has to be less. And in certain books, just tend to work that way. So it's tricky to find the right artist to do something, and writers and artists have to work well together.
Yeah, exactly. It's been really interesting just working with different teams, and different artists and different writers. They all work completely differently. When we worked on Super, there was no script. It was thumbnailed first, and then Zach would make outlines, and then like the dialogue was done last after the art because the artist was writing it. Um, and I was not used to that. It was very unique.
That is a unique way to do
Um,
comics.
yeah, he would kind of map it out visually, and then he would have an outline or an idea for the issue, like of a beginning, middle, and end. But there was no script. That was done after. Um, but it worked really well for him. And then John, of course, has a detailed script, and he loves posting, stunt videos and stuff. That we need to do like a compilation of the stunt videos that John makes, because like people need to see them.
And so, what is that like for you to have a writer who really does give those stunt videos? Because not every writer, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, is a stunt person. I think it's a safe assumption here. And obviously, there's a lot of YouTube, and obviously, people can always provide references to other things, and I'm sure there's a bunch of stunt videos out there. But the fact that John is willing to go to that length to get the point across to the artist, and that's a real attribute to you, and that's a real benefit in a lot of ways, that somebody is so committed and says, hey, look, let me show you. Because I'm sure for an artist, not everybody is a sword expert or understands. I don't know what the word for, is it swordsmanship, I guess is the word. Not
Yeah.
everybody's an expert in, and I don't think you expect your artist to be an expert in swordsmanship and understand the way of the sword. So, what is that like for you, knowing that your writer is providing that? Because it is super rare that somebody has that expertise, and to provide
Oh
that
yeah.
changes the book completely.
Oh yeah, I love it. I've been honestly like I love everyone I work with. I'm so excited like about everything we're doing. The Unthinkables, Paul Hanley is uh he's also super intense. Like he, he- I can't even describe like pop culture wise how much he knows as well. And just his scripts are also super unique. Like they're almost like you could read them like a novel. They're super entertaining. There's a narrative, there's a description, they're funny. Um, so like and then he's also working and we've kind of teased this. We teased it in Elsewhere too. He's working on a series called Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie. And we're actually going to be publishing
Mouthful.
it.
It's a
It is, it
mouthful.
is.
Say that 10 times fast.
We're just going to be calling it quadruple M, I think, in a lot of like once people are used to it, it'll just be MMMM. He did, I don't know, at least 5 years of research on carnivals because this series takes place in a carnival, um, and it involves monsters of all different kinds and creatures. And like seriously, he's done, it might be more than 5 years, it might be 10 years worth of just research about creatures and carnivals. And like he is, so yeah, I don't know. I've had the privilege of working with like absolutely insane people who are just obsessed like with what they're doing and they want to be the best at it. So I'm really lucky.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on with this book. Obviously, I don't think, what was it originally supposed to be, five, or was it always going to be six, or was that just?
Yeah, it was actually originally going to be five. It was planned as five. When Zach Dolan, he was the first artist working on it, started working on it, we got to issue two, and he was like, "Listen, like we have this huge siege. Spoiler alert, guys. Sorry. Of the hot animal machines on the fort, and he was like, "This needs two issues. Like, we need massive battle scenes. We need to make this super epic." And John was like, "You know what? You're right." Because like Zach, showed him a couple of pages. He was like, "Here's some ideas that I have. Here's this," and John was like, and then he just basically an issue into two issues.
So
Um,
what is that like? So what is that like to be in that position? Because obviously, one of the nice things about comics is that sometimes comic stories take a mind of their own, and obviously sometimes you have an intention saying, "Hey, I'm doing 5 issues as a miniseries, but we really need to bump it up to six, and we just need some more space to tell this story thoroughly." And it is kind of cool because you can't do that in other mediums per se. You can't really do that in movies. You can't do that in TV, and I mean, you could do it in a book technically if you need an extra book in a series. It happens sometimes, but in comics, it's kind of cool, and nobody ever complains about that.
yeah, and I think I want to like point out too that like you have to be careful because you can end up with this kind of thing. You can end up with filler, and we didn't want to do that. Um, Anyone who's read like Dragon Ball Z, uh, You know, there's some filler. Like there's a really good storyline inside of Dragon Ball Z, but like
Oh, some of
so
the
we
filler
wanted
episodes are so good though. When Goku
that's
and
true.
Piccolo learn how to drive, oh, that's phenomenal work. I'm sorry, that's the greatest episode ever. When Gohan legitimately racing a dinosaur for 15 episodes, it's amazing. When they
Oh
go to
man.
Planet Namek, the fake one, oh, it's phenomenal. Have you ever just watched the filler and skipped the main story arc? It's amazing. I could watch Dragon Ball Z filler legitimately all day. I purposely bought Dragon Ball in Blu-ray, all 9 seasons, not Dragon Ball Kai for the filler because the filler is
Hmm.
better than the show in so many ways. Going to Fake Planet Namek is amazing. Like 9 episodes on that shit. Oh, it's so good. Goku chasing around bubbles for 4 episodes on King Kai's planet. Oh, what a great concept. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Hey, you haven't even touched the movie fillers. Don't
That's
even start
fair.
that
That's
movie
fair.
fillers. That stuff's amazing. Garlic Jr. Oh, both of them. Great work. I'm sorry. Like if you hate the filler of DBZ, like you really haven't watched the anime. It's almost as good as the
Okay.
Naruto filler and the Bleach filler.
Okay, well let me edit what I said then. Okay, so that filler's good, but the filler where like they spend the whole episode charging up, I could do without that. So with the with adding extra shit to the surgeon, we were aiming for a more quality filler.
I'm just
And it's
saying.
extending the story and it's not, yeah, no, you know what, in your defense you're right, there is sometimes filler can be really good and can be funny and it's
I mean, in all seriousness, though, but backing out of my defensive filler, I get the concept where there have been shows that entire seasons of shows have been filler. And there is a difference between
right.
having a page of filler where she's making a snide remark that has no implication on anything, and she's just yelling at somebody for something, or being an asshole for a page, for lack of a better word. That to me is perfectly fine because we're building character. But there's also a difference when we're having 9 pages of nonsense, where
Right.
and I don't have a problem with comics if we go an extra issue and there's 3 pages of filler that don't need to be there, but to make it to 24 pages, to get 21 pages of actual good content, that makes sense. And I get
Right.
why that has to happen sometimes for page counts. So if you in your issue 6 have 3 pages that have no implication on the story, but that gives us the other 21 pages for this thing to be profitable, makes complete sense to me.
Right. Basically, anything that we added was really cool combat, and then we added a little more depth to the hot animal machines and what was happening in that fight. We actually, I don't know if you've read issue 2 and 3, but we have kind of a big bad. He's on the cover. I have the cover here. This guy, he's like a big dude with a giant sword. Um, he was not, there you go, he was not originally planned, um, and Zach kind of fleshed him out and he was like, no, we want this big ridiculous dude, like basically like a buff meth head who has a giant sword for no practical reason, and kind of expand the combat and expand that whole siege.
Yeah, no. And I think it makes sense because I personally like 6 issue miniseries. I am not a fan of 5 issue miniseries. I actually think it doesn't make sense. I think 6 is actually a perfect arc ender. I think when people do 5 issues, I don't think it's actually enough for me to bite my teeth into. And so I actually like 6 because with 6, the middle is 3 and 4, and storytelling, it's 6 parts.
Yeah.
So issue 1 and 2, in issue 1 we typically get introduced to the characters. Issue 2 we start getting into the conflict. Issue 3 conflict continues. Issue 4 conflict continues. Issue 5 conflict is continuing and sort of either heating up and ending, or downtrodden, and then issue 6 is either complete into the conflict and then unwinding and setting up for the next arc. And I don't know if there is going to be a next arc, with this, because I mean you have the world in this entire universe in many ways that Dr. Hanover's in, and obviously I'm not too sure where it's going, but no matter which way it goes, whether it goes in favor of the fort burns down, the animals win, and other force comes in. Obviously, there's a bunch more stories that can be told out of this, and it doesn't matter which way we go, or you could just stay in the same world and go to North Dakota instead, or you could go to California, where you have a world set up that is nice, that could either cross into this, or the events from what happened in these 6 issues affect something. So it's very cool where this all can go. And so I don't want to press too much further, but obviously I think that there is a lot more stuff that can be done in this world.
Yeah. John also has actually written, but we haven't published it anywhere, I want to say 8 or 10 page script for what happened to Hanover to make her lose her finger. So we have some kind of prequel stuff too that we can work with that I think would be really cool.
And so obviously there's a lot of cool stuff. And then I do want to dive into the rewards of this, because there's a bunch of rewards. And obviously there is the digital copy of issue 4 out there. There's also the physical copy. There's also all 4 issues digitally, which are here for those that are interested. And obviously my friend Corey Hardiman just backed. So that's cool. So that's awesome, because of seeing all this. So thank you, Corey.
Oh, thank you so much.
And then obviously there's a bunch of other rewards as well, where I think this is some art print stuff.
Yep.
And so obviously some dog tags, which are cool. And then there's like stuff you could add on and then pick up some stuff. And then obviously there's some hollow foil cover stuff. So I actually like hollow foils. I think they're cool. So that's kind of cool. So how do your hollow foils work? Because everybody does them differently.
This is actually the first time I'm offering hollow foils. We did some metal covers in the past, but I really like hollow foils, so I wanted to try it. I got some samples from Artist Express, actually. Do you want to pass me the hollow foil sample so I can show it? I have a person over here. I'll get the sample so people can see how shiny it is. It's just like a super shiny metallic kind of cover, and
they're different than metals. So I'm not so much a metal fan. I think metals are fun. I have some metal comics from some companies. Metals are cool, but I prefer hollow foils in many ways.
Yeah, that's it. I like the metal. As we've done this, I've discovered that I like metal prints, but metal covers, like I don't know. I don't like it as much. It's not as
metal covers are also really hard to sign. Metal covers are a pain, in which that it's difficult to sign a metal cover.
Yeah, so this is the hollow foil. This is what it'll look like. The covers will be super shiny and holographic and rainbow like this.
Because everybody does hollows differently. I mean, Mount Olympus does their hollows a certain way. Zenescope does their hollows a certain way. And people also have hollows that just highlight certain elements of the book. People have, hollows that have more of a tint to them. And it's super interesting, because your hollow is something different that I haven't seen, where it's almost like the entire book is shiny in that realm. And
the whole thing is, it's super cool.
So this is why I bring this up. And then even going further, because you mentioned some metal prints, and that's kind of a new thing, where I don't have any metal prints. I don't even know what a metal print looks like, to be honest. I'm very confused on metal prints collectively. You don't need to show if it's not readily available. I'm totally cool with that.
I don't think it is, no.
What prompted that? Because there's metal covers, there's metal cards, and then metal prints are something that now a lot of people are getting into. And it is a change from my understanding. And I don't remember metal prints like 2 years ago. And I'm sure they were around, but they weren't as big as they are now. And that's a whole interesting concept.
Yeah. We started with some metal cards, and then I talked to our metal printer, and I kind of looked at all the other stuff he was offering, and I was like, "Can you send me a sample of a print? Like, I've never seen a metal print." Um, and it's absolutely fantastic. Like, I mean, it's basically just a piece of metal with your stuff printed on it, so it kind of looks hollow foil. It looks shiny, or of course, you can get just a matte one, but I like the shiny ones because I'm a goblin, I guess. Um, but I like it because you can get a really nice art print and then it's durable. Like it lasts forever. The coating doesn't wear off. It doesn't crumple. It's easy to mail out, and it looks super cool.
Yeah, and I think that stuff's just interesting, and obviously these are just some of the things that can be done with that. Obviously it's super cool, and it's not even that expensive, all things considering. And so I don't, and are there, and I'm confused. Are there tiers that have the metal, or are they just add-ons? Because there's a bunch of stuff that goes both ways in this campaign.
Yeah, the metal prints I have just as an add-on currently, rather than a tier, just because I had so much cool stuff on tiers, but I also didn't want to make too many complicated tiers. I thought maybe just offering them after the fact, people could go in and be like, oh, well, I want this extra stuff too.
And then
But I
also
might
something
change
else.
that in the future. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, 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 no. What were you saying? I cut you
I
off
was just saying,
really.
I was just saying we might change that in the future and put it on a tier again, depending on the demand.
And then also another thing that is on a tier is the coin. And
Yes.
this is interesting because I'm not exactly sure the whole extent of the coin, but obviously it is of Rogers. It has word is bond. Obviously, it's cool. It's very much Western. It's supposed to be, I guess, sort of like a dollar piece type thing. And so, what prompted this? Because coins are fascinating.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where the idea came from. So we work with Geekify on many of our campaigns. John Taylor, who owns Geekify, is a good friend of mine. He's really awesome. Um, and sometimes I just message him and I'm like, "What do you think would be cool? Like, what do you want to make?" And he was like, "Well, what about a coin? Like we do these minted coins or whatever. Like, what do you think of it?" And he sent me some samples, and I was like, "Wow, this is super cool. I think it's a great idea." So we have a Hanover coin, and then we'll be doing a new Rogers coin, and then on each campaign we're going to add another character, and then so by the end when we release the trade, we'll have a full set of coins, and I'm thinking maybe a holder for them or something like something really cool like that.
And so I just think it's cool because I also think it creates more of an experience in many
Yeah.
ways. It also creates a display piece, creates a talking point piece. I have some cool concepts, and there's a concept called getting coined. And it's when you're presented like almost like a challenge type coin type thing. And so that's cool. I'm not too sure if I showed this already, but obviously the dog tags, and then as well as also the shirt, which is cool. And so this is interesting where we get that chibi type style, but also we get Hanover on her horse, and this is cool in many ways, and this is fun. So where did this shirt idea come from? Because it's nice to actually see a horse and get its proper attention.
Yeah. The design was something that Zach Dolan did a long time ago. And recently we've been working with T Public and decided to start offering shirts, and I was like, we need to get his stuff on this shirt because it's really cute. I think it looks perfect on a shirt. And like Hanover and Old Paint are like that's the surgeon, like that's the whole deal. So I'm actually really excited to get one. So because this
So,
is the
so
first
it's
time
all
we're
it's
doing
all
shirts.
because you wanted it. It has nothing to do with that, right?
Well, I assume generally if I want it, then someone else has got to be excited about it, right?
Everybody who I speak to with certain goals always says, "Hey, I want this thing, and my backers probably also want it too, but I want it because like there's a bunch of cool stuff like coasters, for instance. I love coasters or like poker chips or like a particular print or bookmarks that are cool or things like that. Like a lot of people want cool stuff who are building their Kickstarters, And typically, if something looks cool, people want it, and that's how I view it. And then obviously there's some other cool stuff in association with this that go beyond. There's original surgeon pages, and I'm not too sure if they're gone yet, because original art does sell out quickly, both on the indie level and on the mainstream level. So I know that people can pick up, some original artwork if it's still available.
Yeah,
Also,
we still have some. We do.
and so obviously indie work is cool, and it's really not that expensive, all things considering, And if you actually like this, it's pretty cool to hang up original comic art. Also, you could appear in Surgeon and be put into the book, and that's something that a lot of Kickstarters do. And so if you're really into comics and into indie comics, and you want your likeness to appear or appear as a character, or I'm assuming that and I know people do this, that they actually give gifts of people appearing in comics. So they'll back it, but they know that they're going to give it to somebody, that tier. And so that's also an option that a lot of people do as of lately. So that's kind of cool. And then also you can pretty much get everything in this Kickstarter in one fashion or another. And obviously there's a bunch of add-ons. So if you back the physical book, but you want a particular metal print, or you want a regular print, I'm assuming you could also get, or if you just want a coin, I'm assuming that's all going to be in backer kit.
Yeah. I actually used to do all this stuff myself, like with spreadsheets. And on our last campaign, I decided to take the plunge to backer kit with some encouragement from Russell Novelty and some other creators. And I don't think I'm going to be not using it again, because it's freaking great. It's incredible. It makes things easier for the backers too. So yeah, probably.
And also, it was a bit of a slow rollout, and it took Kickstarter a while to figure out how to roll it out. And so, in Kickstarter's defense, I mean, it took a while. They also tested it with certain people, and it was very, very interesting on that rollout. And it has some kinks, from my understanding, but I think it's ultimately working out, and it's a very cool feature that's still in its infancy. So why people didn't use it is understandable. So I mean, and also it's nice because sometimes somebody doesn't want to drop, like $100 tier, but they want one item from the tier, or they want multiple of an item. Where I've seen that too, where perfect examples that I backed the Kickstarter and I wanted 4 coasters, and because of backer kit, I was allowed to get 2 more coasters. And it was in my order, and it was very, very efficient and helpful, versus me having to go in and get another $35 tier added on, versus me spending $15. And so that's kind of a big thing that I like about backer kit.
Yeah,
and I've also seen backer kit used as almost an additional store where things that weren't even in the Kickstarter are in backer kit, and it gives an incentive to back on backer kit. So it's super interesting in that regard. And so a lot of cool stuff can be picked up and got from tiers. And if there's something in a tier that you want, but you don't want to back that tier, probably for the most part it's on backer kit. So it's super cool. So obviously there's a lot of cool stuff going on with this project, and obviously we're going deep down into some unexpected territory, for lack of a better word. And so I want to back out of this project, though, because I do want to talk about Kickstarter, and I think we're on that topic where obviously Kickstarter has evolved dramatically in the last 3 years. I think COVID has forced evolution as well. I think that a lot of interesting stuff is happening on Kickstarter. I think crowdfunding is in a very interesting position because a lot of big names are coming into Kickstarter. A lot of big companies are coming into Kickstarter. More people are on Kickstarter, and more projects are happening on Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is not behaving logically per se in the last year and a half. And so where do you view Kickstarter going, and where do you think it's all going to wind up? Because it's super interesting right now, and it's a super interesting time to be in crowdfunding.
It is interesting, yeah. And Diamond isn't doing very well. So people are kind of looking to Kickstarter as a means of distribution almost. Like I know I am at this point. as an indie company, you know, sometimes like with some of these projects, we can't make the schedule that Diamond wants us to make, so we can't go with Diamond. So we use a Kickstarter as basically a pre-order. You know, you pre-order it. Yeah, you can get some extra stuff, which is great and people love it. But for the most part, like it's like, oh, the new Surgeon issue's up. Here's the pre-order. And it functions just like that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the next year. We're going to see a lot more comics on Kickstarter, um, and, you know, potentially new means of distribution.
And I also think that there's going to be companies that pop up, very much like print on demand type of companies that pop up that are subsident, I guess, supplemental to Kickstarter. Your Comic Distro is one of them, and they were on my show, and we had an hour and 45-minute conversation talking about their entire business model of figuring out how to get into comic shops and print to order into comic shops. And I have a feeling that a bunch more are going to come up directly dealing with that, especially with Diamond and DC and Marvel are leaving now. And a variety of other companies are signing with Diamond and some are leaving, and it's becoming a very interesting thing. And even though indie comics are not mainstream, what happens in the mainstream affects indie, and what happens in the indie affects mainstream in many ways, where they are in the same ecosphere. And so I do think that it's very interesting. I've noticed pre-order and also Kickstarter, which is crazy, all throughout 2020, there were more projects on Kickstarter. And statistically and logically, there were supposed to be more failures. And more projects were actually funded in the last year, which doesn't make any sense logically. I mean, basic economics says that if you have 250 projects, and now the success rate back throughout all of 2020 was higher than it is today, which is crazy. And there were more projects in 2020. So it's kind of a crazy entity on how it's not being logical. And I don't know why. And I don't think anybody knows why per se. And I know that Russell has done some statistic stuff on it, and I don't think he knows. And this isn't a jab at Russell. I think Russell is a great writer, but I don't think anybody knows why. And I would love to figure out why Kickstarter in 2020, the success rate was higher than it is today. So it's fascinating, but that's a whole economic. If somebody wants to write a thesis on that, be my guest. Economic, go right ahead.
Comic sales and distribution in a pandemic, a study.
Super interesting. I'm sure DC or Marvel will hire you at a very nice salary on that thesis. But even going further off of this, because obviously COVID happened. In case you've been living under a rock, it's not the Surgeon pandemic / apocalypse per se. It's not that bad. Hopefully, it's not that bad. But kidding aside, how has COVID affected you? Because it's messed up a lot of stuff. Obviously, San Diego hasn't happened. It's not happening again. It's happening on Thanksgiving weekend, which is a disaster. I don't know what New York Comic Con looks like. I don't know what, and you're on the West Coast, so I don't know if you would come up to New York, but obviously San Diego is a big deal. And Emerald City didn't happen, and WonderCon's not happening. And WonderCon, I think, was supposed to happen this weekend or the weekend before. And so obviously it's a very different world we live in comics right now. And so how have you been affected in launching, your Kickstarters, marketing your product, being at cons to sell and be seen and catch people who never heard of you? And even where do you foresee it going? Because it is going to be a different world when things return.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when everything started, we kind of held back because it didn't feel right releasing anything. When everything started, everyone was struggling and not being able to work, and we waited and we waited, and we were like, this isn't going away. And we have, but I'm hiring artists, I'm hiring writers, and like they're out of work too. They need money. I need to try to get them some money. So we just hit a point and we launched, I think the Surgeon 3 was the first thing we launched post-COVID, and it did really well. And we were like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do some more books, because, everyone's stuck at home, and now they're like, oh, well, I guess I'll find some comics to read and play some video games. So video games and comics have really, they really blew up. So we, for the most part, have done better. Obviously, not having cons is weird, but I think having all these shows and um, online cons that are cropping up is actually great because the cost of travel and the cost of cons and the cost of hotels is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Like it's really great to get your stuff out there, but it's also really expensive.
So one of the things I was speaking with Tom Hutchinson from Big Dog Inc. And what he was saying is that he's becoming a lot more selective because it's time, expenses, travel, hotels, food, all this stuff, creating products for a con. I don't know if you do variants or you go deep or you create exclusive things for the cons you go to, but that's a whole different ball game. And now, he's being more selective and actually choosing the con depending on the audience. And obviously there's a lot of data where there's this. I was speaking with the guy before, and we were speaking about a specific con like MechaCon, which is a convention that only deals with mecha, so anime mecha, so it's specifically narrowed. And so obviously I think that in many ways is also the future for a lot of comic creators, is saying, okay, what con am I going to? Because if there's a con that caters to Doctor Who, you might not want to go to that con per se, but if there's a con that caters really towards indie or has a big indie presence, you might want to be there because there's fans that are there. And I think that's going to be a major shift, is that I think as far as maybe not for fans per se, but more for creators, is that they're going to be choosing, cons on the audience that they attract.
Yeah, exactly. And certain cons, it's not even audience related. The cons are just focused differently. So in my experience, like Denver Comic Con, for example, is really good, and indie creators do really well. But we did a couple of Wizard Worlds, and Wizard World is extremely expensive to attend, but it's really focused on celebrities and stuff, and it does not, for indie creators, like we didn't make enough money like to offset the ridiculous cost of Wizard World. So
There's a whole issue right now that's going on, and one of the first people that was speaking about this is Dave Dorman. And what he was saying, and he wrote a piece, and he got a lot of flack for it. I mean, we're talking like 8 years ago. And I think he was completely correct, where he was saying that like a cosplayer, gets more attention than him as an artist, and then he has a hard time breaking even. And even if he does break even, that's all he's breaking even on. And sometimes he loses money, and so he stopped going to conventions because of that. And he's doing a lot of cool comic work and stuff, but he just stopped going, and he got a lot of flack for it. But when we go to a con, I mean, I used to go to Awesome Con, and they have a whole celebrity aisle, and it's kind of crazy where it's weird. And like I was looking for indie stuff, and there was very few indie stuff. I mean, Artist Alley was cool. There was a lot of cool people. I got a commission by certain people that I like, and they do well, and it was awesome. But one of the things that there was like no indie presence, and so it is very weird. But then I go to a small convention, a lot of indie people are there, and some of the older people in the comic industry, and you legitimately can have like a 10-20 minute conversation. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting world, and I hope that smaller cons pop up more than bigger ones, because I think that there's just more interaction, because the smaller cons are more comic focused. And I find like the mega cons, and I'm not trying to bash them, but WizardCon, Awesome Con, New York Comic Con, San Diego in many ways, are very celebrity oriented. They're not comic oriented.
yeah.
And so I really hope for smaller cons to pop up, because I tend to think they attract better people and more interesting people. And I like smaller environments in many ways. No offense to anybody else, but I don't want to be around 20,000 people ever again in my life.
It's it's so cramped. It's crazy. We did San Diego one year, and I cosplayed as well to try to get people to the table or whatever. But it's not like, it's just mayhem. Like it's my husband describes it as like kind of walls of BO that travel through the convention.
Showering is your friend at New York Comic Con. I did New York Comic Con one year. I was not happy about it. It was very, very, very cramped. It's very, very aggressive. And, and then I did Anime NYC, which is in the Jab Center as well. Still very cramped. It was a little bit less cramped, but, and at least with AwesomeCon has a lot more space, but it is cramped, and I'm on crutches, and people don't pay attention. It is not a good environment, cons. And, I don't want to be around 20,000 people because there is some called, con crud. It's real. If you go to con on Friday and you're there Saturday and you leave on Sunday and you're sick on Monday, it's not that hard to figure out where that was from. So that's all I'm saying. Yeah. I don't want to be around 20,000, 40,000 people ever again in my life. I don't want to even go to a football game with those around me. Because it's a matter of what's next. It's not a matter of any more vaccinations. It's a matter of what's next and who is really healthy. And I'm not scared of it. I'm a healthy, 28-year-old guy, but at the same time, I mean, it's just a matter of what's next. And I'm not so gung-ho to get back into the saddle so quickly with cons.
Yeah, same. And like, I feel like everyone would benefit from cons that are spaced out, that have some breathing room, where creators don't have to carnival bark. Like, people literally were carnival barking at San Diego because there's hundreds of tables and people don't have the focus to try every table. And so people are yelling at you. They're like, come here, pretty lady, and you're like, this is a comic convention. Like, I should just be looking at your art and coming to see you and talking to you, and that's it. Like, it shouldn't be like a sporting event.
It's very, very, very crazy, and it's just a weird entire world, and I just think it's going to be super, super interesting where this all lands, and I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error. I really think there's going to be trial and error on what the solution is, and the only thing I'm certain of is that the virtual side is never leaving. It is not leaving. There's too much money. The live sales on comics. I'm attending a virtual Comic-Con that is a shopping network that has made me more money in the last 12 months than anything in the comic world has ever made me, which is ludicrous. So it's a company called Zenescope. Literally, I buy everything I need from my living room, and then I resell it for double or triple or quadruple what I paid for it, and they know exactly what I'm doing, and it's in limited qualities, and I've made more money from that than I've ever made at a con, and it's crazy in my living room. So go figure that out. It's never leaving much money in it. But on that note, obviously I want to give you an opportunity for self-promotion because there's a lot of cool stuff. So where can people find Unlikely UHS, Unlikely Hero Studios? Where can people follow you on social media? I know there's the link to the website up above that obviously you can check out the website. And where can people check that out? Do you have an email list, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? TikTok, if you're on TikTok, because that's the new thing. The cool kids are doing.
Oh yeah.
Totally cool, guys. I have a TikTok. I do.
I'm working on a TikTok. I have no time, but I would really like us to have one.
That's good too.
Yeah. So the website is uhstudios.com. You can sign up to our newsletter there. On Facebook, we're just Unlikely Hero Studios. On Twitter, we're at UH Studios. On Instagram, we're at UH Studios Official. If you want to back the surgeon, it's uhstudios.com/Kickstarter. That's the easy link that we give people. I think that's it. No TikTok yet, but it's coming soon.
And obviously, one of the things that the link for the Kickstarter is up above, as well as for Unlikely Hero Studios is as well above there. So you can easily, if you're watching on Facebook, you can click on those links. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on those links. I don't know how Twitch works, which we're streaming on as well. Obviously, it might be somewhere in there. I'm not exactly sure. But on those two things, YouTube and Facebook, it is up there. So you can, it's in the description or the link above the interview, so you can check that out. And obviously, you have to support indie. It is super important to support indie. And that means that you need to back Kickstarters. And let's say that you necessarily are not a big fan of the surgeon, but you like the idea of super, you could pick up a book of super, you could pick up a graphic novel, you could pick it up digitally, you could pick it up in physical, and obviously you could buy right from their website, and that's ideally the place where you want to buy it from first and foremost before you go somewhere else to buy it, because they probably make the most profit out of that. So consider buying directly from the people if you can. And I say that, and if you're in a circumstance where money's tight and you can't back the Kickstarter, or you can't pick up something that you like or you heard that seems interesting, one of the things that you should do is get on their email list. Super important. It's free. You're going to be up to date on everything that's coming out there, the newsletter, all that fun stuff. Check out their website also as well, which if you're going to get on their email list, you should probably do that. So you should check out their website to get on their email list, I should say. And then obviously follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any social media, preferably where you choose. Everybody's different. People like Twitter. Some people love Instagram. Some people love Facebook. Wherever you are comfortable with following on, do that, because you will also be kept informed there, and it is super helpful. And then on those platforms, you should be sharing the content. Share the Kickstarter. Retweet it, because you never know who of your friends or who follows you might be like, oh man, this looks super interesting, and then click on it and then back. Give a perfect example, and I'm going to embarrass my friend Corey here, who does Sister Mercy. He just came across this and he just backed it because we were doing this interview, and he backed it live, and he left a comment. And if I didn't do this interview, Corey would have never found this. So that just gives you an example of what can happen, and it legitimately happened in real time. It happened a little bit about 40 minutes ago. Is that to the T, actually. So that's just an example of what sharing can do. And so I encourage everybody to go share that. And that's all I have. So obviously, if you have the money, please back it. If you don't, because you're in a hard time, then you should be following on social media, because it does make a difference. And you should be sharing it, liking it, and commenting, and because it does help tremendously. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Check out The Surge and check out Super. Check out Unthinkables, Up from the Skies, Elsewhere. We've opened submissions for Elsewhere 3. If you have something you want to submit, give us a shout.
And on that note, we are done.